In this episode of True Crimes Unfold, we unravel the chilling child abductions in Japan, centering on the unsolved disappearance of Yukari Yokoyama and similar cases spanning decades. We see what happens when systemic issues, potential cover-ups, and flaws in a nation's criminal justice system can cause a major catastrophe. Please note that events and scenarios in this video may be graphic for some viewers. Discretion is advised. Details of the videos are taken from actual case files. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're listening from, what type of cases you'd like us to cover next, and we'll make sure to add them to our list. And don't forget to subscribe to get new stories as soon as they're released. Now settle in, get ready, and let's begin. It was a sunny spring day in 1996 when 5-year-old Yukari Yokoyama vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a heartbroken family and a nation desperate for answers. Little did anyone know, her disappearance would ignite one of Japan's most chilling mysteries. A story of systemic failure, eerie patterns, and a shadowy figure who may still be out there. The small town of Ojiya was known for its serenity, nestled in the scenic landscapes of Niigata Prefecture. It was a place where neighbors trusted one another, and children played freely, their laughter echoing through the streets. But all of that changed on that fateful day in May, when Yukari, with her bright smile and pigtails bouncing, disappeared without a trace. That morning, Yukari had begged her parents to let her walk to her friend's house just a few streets away. It was a trip she had made many times before, and her parents reluctantly agreed, believing she was safe in their tight-knit community. But when lunchtime came and Yukari didn't return, her mother's heart sank. "I had this feeling, this horrible, sinking feeling, that something was wrong," her mother later said, tears streaming down her face. "I ran to her friend's house, but she wasn't there." That's when the nightmare began. Within hours, the entire town was mobilized. Police, volunteers, and neighbors scoured the area, calling out Yukari's name and checking every alley, park, and field. Posters bearing her cherubic face were plastered on walls, and local news channels broadcasted her disappearance, urging anyone with information to come forward. But the hours turned into days, and the days into weeks. There were no witnesses, no leads, and no clues. It was as if Yukari had simply vanished into thin air. The only thing left behind was a mother's haunting account of the last time she saw her daughter, waving goodbye with her tiny hand. Ojiya was no longer the safe haven it had once been. Parents kept their children indoors, locking their doors and looking over their shoulders. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some speculated that Yukari had been kidnapped by a stranger, while others whispered about a more sinister possibility. Could someone in their own community have taken her? Then came the eerie discoveries. Over the next few years, several other children went missing under similarly baffling circumstances. Each case bore chilling similarities: young victims, quiet towns, and no witnesses. It wasn't long before people began connecting the dots, wondering if these disappearances were the work of a serial predator. Yukari's case wasn't the first or the last. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a string of similar disappearances across Japan. There was 7-year-old Mei Sato, who vanished near a pachinko parlor in 1988, and 9-year-old Hiroki Tanaka, whose bicycle was found abandoned near a riverside in 1992. Both cases, like Yukari's, were marked by an eerie absence of evidence. But what truly sent shivers down the nation's spine was the growing realization that these children's disappearances seemed to form a sinister pattern. Many had been last seen near pachinko parlors or convenience stores, everyday places that now felt tainted by danger. The media dubbed the unidentified perpetrator the phantom predator. His or her ability to abduct children without leaving a single clue left both investigators and the public baffled. Was this person a master manipulator, blending seamlessly into the background? Or was the truth even darker, involving a network of accomplices and cover-ups? For Yukari's family, every day since her disappearance has been a waking nightmare. Her parents have kept her room exactly as it was, her toys neatly arranged, and her favorite stuffed rabbit perched on the bed. "We can't bear to move anything," her father said in a rare interview. "It's like she's still here, waiting to come home." Every lead, no matter how small, has been a glimmer of hope for them, only to be dashed by disappointment. "We've had people call, claiming they saw her in another town, another prefecture," her mother shared. "But it's never her. It's never her." The Yokoyamas aren't alone in their grief. The families of other missing children have formed a tight-knit support group, bound by their shared pain and their relentless quest for answers. Together, they've become vocal advocates for better policing, demanding accountability and action from a system they feel has failed them. Yukari's case, along with the others, has cast a harsh spotlight on Japan's criminal justice system. Critics point to outdated investigative techniques, an over-reliance on coerced confessions, and a lack of interagency cooperation as key reasons why so many of these cases remain unsolved. In the case of Yukari, local police were accused of mishandling crucial early leads, wasting valuable time that could have been used to track down the perpetrator. Witnesses who reported seeing a suspicious van near the area were allegedly dismissed, their accounts buried in the chaos of the initial investigation. "It's a broken system," said journalist Koshi Shimizu, who has spent years investigating these cases. "The focus isn't on finding the truth, it's on closing cases quickly, even if it means leaving questions unanswered." Decades later, Yukari's disappearance remains an open wound, not just for her family, but for the entire nation. Who took her, and why? Could her case be linked to the other missing children? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, is the phantom predator still out there? Despite advances in forensic technology and renewed interest in cold cases, Yukari's fate remains a mystery. For her parents, every phone call, every knock on the door, is a cruel reminder of what they've lost and what they may never know. "We just want closure," her father said, his voice breaking. "We just want to bring her home." Yukari's story is more than just a tragedy. It's a call to action. Her disappearance has sparked debates about the need for systemic reform, better policing, and greater protections for vulnerable children. Advocacy groups have used her case to push for change, demanding that Japan's government prioritize solving these heartbreaking mysteries. For the Yokoyamas, the fight isn't over. They've vowed to keep searching, to keep hoping, and to keep telling Yukari's story until the day they finally get the answers they've been waiting for. as her mother tearfully said, "She's not just our daughter. She's everyone's daughter, and she deserves to be found." As the disappearance of Yukari Yokoyama gripped the nation, a chilling realization began to take hold. Her case wasn't unique. Across Japan, similar stories of missing children, eerily alike in their circumstances, emerged from the shadows. The patterns were unmistakable, and the implications were terrifying. Could Yukari's case be the work of a serial predator, silently hunting for decades? Long before Yukari vanished, there were whispers of other cases that bore striking resemblances. One of the earliest involved 7-year-old Mei Sato, who disappeared in 1988 near a pachinko parlor in a small town in Hokkaido. Mei had been playing with friends just outside the bustling establishment when she ran off to fetch a toy from home. She never returned. Witnesses claimed they saw a man lingering nearby in a white van, but police dismissed the sightings as inconclusive. May's case went cold, her family left with nothing but memories and a growing sense of frustration with the system that failed them. Then came Haruki Tanaka, a cheerful 9-year-old who vanished in 1992 while riding his bicycle near a riverside park in Nagano. His bike was discovered a day later, neatly propped against a tree, but there was no sign of Hiroki. Local police launched an extensive search but found no leads. The case was quietly shelved, and Hiroki's parents were left to grieve in silence. By the time Yukari went missing in 1996, investigators and journalists began to notice a disturbing pattern. Location similarities. Many of the disappearances occurred near pachinko parlors, riversides, or quiet residential neighborhoods. Age range. The victims were primarily children between the ages of 5 and 10, often described as outgoing and trusting. No evidence. In almost every case, there were no witnesses, no physical evidence, and no clear suspects. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Were these random acts of violence or the work of a single, calculating predator? The media dubbed the potential culprit the phantom predator, a shadowy figure who seemed to strike without leaving a trace. If the phantom predator was indeed responsible for these cases, their ability to evade detection was as chilling as the crimes themselves. Experts speculated that the predator's methods involved meticulous planning and an uncanny ability to blend into the environment. Theories included luring tactics, using toys, snacks, or even a friendly demeanor to gain the trust of unsuspecting children. Mobility. The use of vehicles like vans allowed for quick escapes and made tracking more difficult. Knowledge of local areas. Familiarity with secluded spots and quiet routes ensured that the predator could operate unnoticed. "It's as if they knew exactly where to strike and how to disappear," said investigative journalist Koshi Shimizu, who has spent decades tracking these cases. This wasn't someone acting on impulse. This was someone who planned every detail. For the families of the missing children, the similarities brought both hope and despair. Hope that their cases might finally be connected, leading to answers. Despair at the realization that their children could have fallen victim to a serial predator. The Sato family, still mourning the loss of May, shared their frustration in a rare interview. "We always felt like we were fighting alone," her mother said. "The police would give us vague updates, but nothing ever happened. Now, hearing about these other cases, we wonder, could May have been saved if they had taken her disappearance seriously?" Similar sentiments were echoed by Hiroki Tanaka's parents, who revealed that they were never informed about other missing children cases in their area. "We had to find out through the news," Hiroki's father said bitterly. "How can you connect the dots if no one tells you there are dots to connect?" The trail of missing children cases exposed glaring flaws in Japan's criminal justice system. Among the most troubling issues were lack of coordination. Local police departments often operated in silos, failing to share information that could have linked cases. Dismissal of witness accounts. Many eyewitnesses who came forward were either ignored or discredited, leaving potential leads unexplored. Outdated techniques. In the 1980s and 1990s, forensic technology in Japan lagged behind global standards, making it difficult to collect and analyze evidence effectively. Journalist Takoshi Shimizu, who became a vocal critic of these systemic issues, described the handling of these cases as a tragic combination of incompetence and indifference. His investigative articles, published in major newspapers, sparked public outrage and calls for reform. One of the most haunting cases tied to the phantom predator was that of 6-year-old Akiko Yamamoto, who disappeared in 1994 from a bustling shopping district in Osaka. Unlike the other cases, Akiko's abduction had a key witness, her older brother, Daisuke, who was just 10 years old at the time. According to Daisuke, a man approached them while their parents were shopping, offering Akiko a balloon. When she hesitated, he promised to show her more balloons in his car parked nearby. Before Daisuke could react, the man grabbed Akiko and fled. "I ran after them," Daisuke said, his voice breaking during a televised interview years later. "But he was too fast. I couldn't save her." Despite Daisuke's detailed description of the suspect, including his height, build, and clothing, police failed to identify the man. Akiko's case remains unsolved. Her family, haunted by both her loss and the knowledge that her abductor slipped through their fingers. As more cases emerged, the media played a pivotal role in connecting the dots and keeping public attention focused on the missing children. Documentaries, investigative reports, and true crime specials explore the possibility of a serial predator, analyzing the patterns and critiquing the system that allowed these cases to go unsolved. However, not all coverage was helpful. Sensationalist headlines and speculative theories often overshadow the facts, causing unnecessary pain for the victims' families. "Every time a new article comes out, we relive the nightmare," said Yukari's mother. "We just want the truth, not rumors or guesses." The string of disappearances sparked a movement among the families of the missing children. They banded together, forming a support group that became both a source of solace and a platform for advocacy. Their goals were clear: push for better policing, demand reforms to ensure that investigations are thorough and coordinated, raise public awareness, keep the stories of the missing children alive to prevent their cases from being forgotten, support each other, provide emotional and practical support to families, navigating the painful and often isolating experience of losing a child. At one of their gatherings, Yukari's father spoke about the importance of unity. "We are stronger together," he said. "Our children deserve justice, and we won't stop until we get it." By the late 1990s, the phantom predator had become a national obsession, a symbol of both fear and failure. Parents kept their children closer, communities became more vigilant, and authorities faced mounting pressure to solve the mystery. But even as public awareness grew, the trail seemed to grow colder. The phantom predator, if they existed, appeared to vanish into the shadows once again, leaving behind a legacy of pain, unanswered questions, and a haunting sense of unfinished business. While police efforts stagnated, leaving families in agony and the public demanding answers, one man refused to let the story of the missing children fade into obscurity. Investigative journalist Koshi Shimizu took it upon himself to uncover the truth, peeling back layers of negligence, secrecy, and systemic failure that plagued Japan's justice system. Koshi Shimizu was no stranger to uncovering uncomfortable truths. Known for his fearless reporting on government corruption and societal issues, he had earned a reputation as a journalist willing to go where others wouldn't. When he first heard about the disappearance of Yukari Yokoyama, he was struck by the eerie similarities to earlier cases. "What stood out to me was the silence," Shimizu said in an interview. "The media wasn't connecting the dots. The police weren't sharing information, and families were left to grieve in isolation. It felt like no one wanted to dig deeper." Shimizu began his investigation with a simple question. Could Yukari's disappearance be part of a larger pattern? The more he dug, the more disturbing the answers became. Shimizu's first breakthrough came when he compiled a list of unsolved cases involving missing children over the past 2 decades. The similarities were chilling. Geographical clustering. Many cases occurred in quiet towns or suburban areas, often near pachinko parlors, riversides, or convenience stores. No evidence left behind. In almost every instance, the perpetrator managed to avoid leaving behind physical evidence, confounding investigators. Witness patterns. When witnesses were present, they often described a man driving a van or car. Though details were inconsistent, Shimizu meticulously pieced together a timeline, charting the locations and circumstances of each disappearance. His work revealed a potential serial predator whose movements were as calculated as they were sinister. "It wasn't just about the victims," he explained. "It was about the predator's ability to move unseen, to exploit the gaps in our systems." One of Shimizu's most explosive revelations was the role of police negligence in prolonging the mystery. Through interviews with retired officers and leaked internal reports, he uncovered a pattern of mishandled investigations, ignored leads. In Yukari's case, a witness reported seeing a suspicious van near her home, but police failed to follow up on the tip until weeks later. Lack of coordination. Local police departments often operated independently, refusing to share information that could have linked cases. Pressure to close cases. In several instances, police coerced confessions from suspects who were later proven innocent, wasting valuable time and resources. "These weren't just mistakes," Shimizu said. They were systemic failures that allowed the predator to continue. His reporting sparked outrage, with families and advocacy groups demanding accountability. Public trust in the police plummeted, and calls for reform grew louder. Shimizu's relentless work also uncovered new leads that reignited hope for justice. One of the most significant breakthroughs came from a tip he received about the disappearance of Akiko Yamamoto, the 6-year-old taken from a shopping district in Osaka. A former security guard contacted Shimizu after reading one of his articles, claiming he had seen a man matching the suspect's description frequenting the area around the time of Akiko's abduction. He was always lingering near the toy section, the guard said. At the time, it didn't seem suspicious, but now it makes my skin crawl. Shimizu tracked down other witnesses who provided similar accounts, creating a composite profile of the possible perpetrator. While the police had dismissed these accounts years earlier, Shimizu's investigation brought them back to light, forcing authorities to revisit the case. As Shimizu's work gained attention, he became a thorn in the side of Japan's criminal justice system. Police officials accused him of sensationalism, while government agencies attempted to discredit his findings. But Shimizu refused to back down. "The truth doesn't care about comfort," he said. "These families deserve answers, and I won't stop until they get them." His persistence led to the creation of a task force dedicated to revisiting cold cases, a move that was both celebrated and criticized. While some hailed it as a step forward, others questioned whether the same flawed system could deliver justice. One of Shimizu's most significant contributions was giving the families of the missing children a platform to share their stories. Through interviews and public forums, he helped amplify their voices, turning personal grief into collective action. Yukari's mother, speaking at a press conference organized by Shimizu, described the pain of being ignored by authorities. "For years, we felt invisible," she said, "but thanks to people like Mr. Shimizu, we finally feel seen." The families formed a coalition to advocate for systemic reform, pushing for better investigative practices and greater accountability. Their efforts, combined with Shimizu's reporting, created a groundswell of support that forced the government to take action. While Shimizu's work brought progress, it also took a heavy toll on him personally. In interviews, he spoke candidly about the emotional weight of investigating such harrowing cases. "You carry these stories with you," he said. "You see the faces of the children in your dreams, and you hear the cries of their families. It's something you never forget." Despite the toll, Shimizu remained committed to his mission, driven by a sense of duty to the victims and their loved ones. "They don't get to walk away from this," he said, "so why should I?" Shimizu's reporting didn't just uncover new leads. It changed the way Japan approached missing children cases. Public pressure led to increased transparency. Police departments began sharing information across jurisdictions, creating a centralized database for missing persons. Improved forensic techniques, advances in DNA testing and evidence collection became standard practice, helping to solve cold cases. Legislative reforms. Laws were introduced to hold police accountable for negligence and to provide greater support for families of missing persons. For Shimizu, these changes were a testament to the power of persistence and the importance of holding systems accountable. Change doesn't happen overnight, he said, but every step forward is a step worth taking. Koshi Shimizu's work remains a beacon of hope for the families of the missing children and an example of the critical role journalism plays in uncovering the truth. While many questions about the phantom predator remain unanswered, his investigation has ensured that these stories will not be forgotten. As he once said, these children deserve more than just justice. They deserve to be remembered, and their families deserve to know that their pain mattered. As the investigation into Japan's missing children unfolded, it became painfully clear that the real villain wasn't just the phantom predator. It was a broken system that allowed the predator to thrive. From neglected leads to outdated investigative methods, the systemic failures that plagued these cases became a story of their own, one that demanded answers and accountability. The disappearances of children like Yukari Yokoyama, Meisato, and Hiroki Tanaka exposed glaring weaknesses in Japan's criminal justice system. The police, often viewed as stalwart protectors of the public, struggled to keep up with the complexities of these cases. Key issues included fragmented investigations. Each case was handled by local police departments with little to no coordination across jurisdictions. As a result, patterns were missed and crucial connections between cases went unnoticed. Dismissal of witness accounts. Witnesses who reported suspicious activity, such as the van seen near Yukari's home, were often ignored or dismissed due to lack of corroborating evidence. This led to valuable leads going cold. In their desperation to close cases, police often resorted to coercing confessions from suspects, many of whom were later proven innocent. This not only delayed justice, but also allowed the real predator to remain at large. These failures painted a grim picture of a system more focused on appearances than outcomes. A system ill-equipped to handle the evolving nature of crime. One of the most significant failings was the misuse, or outright neglect, of forensic technology. By the 1990s, DNA testing was becoming a critical tool in solving crimes worldwide. Yet, in Japan, outdated methods and a lack of investment in modern technology left investigators struggling to analyze evidence effectively. In the case of Akiko Yamamoto, for instance, a piece of clothing believed to have been worn by her abductor was recovered. Despite its potential to yield DNA evidence, the item was mishandled and stored improperly, rendering it useless for testing. By the time forensic advancements could have been applied, the evidence had degraded beyond repair. This wasn't just negligence. It was a betrayal of the victims and their families, said journalist Koshi Shimizu. The tools to solve these cases existed, but the system refused to use them. The pressure to solve high-profile cases led to a disturbing trend: the reliance on coerced confessions. In several instances, individuals were detained and interrogated for hours, sometimes days, until they confessed to crimes they didn't commit. One such case involved Tetsuo Higa, a factory worker who was accused of abducting Hiroki Tanaka. Despite a lack of physical evidence linking him to the crime, Higa confessed after enduring 36 hours of continuous interrogation. Years later, DNA evidence proved his innocence. But by then, the real predator had vanished without a trace. These tactics didn't just destroy innocent lives, Shimizu explained. They gave the true criminal more time to act. For the families of the missing children, The systemic failures added another layer of pain to their already unbearable grief. Time and again, they were promised progress, only to be met with silence and excuses. Yukari's father recalled the frustration of dealing with unresponsive authorities. "We would call for updates, and they tell us to be patient," he said. "How do you stay patient when your child is missing? When every second feels like it could mean the difference between life and death." The families often took matters into their own hands, organizing searches, distributing flyers, and even hiring private investigators. But their efforts were limited by resources and access, leaving them to rely on a system that seemed determined to let them down. Part of the problem lay in the rigid bureaucracy that governed Japan's criminal justice system. Decisions were often bogged down by red tape, with investigations requiring approval from multiple layers of hierarchy before proceeding. This created delays that proved fatal in time-sensitive cases. A former detective, speaking anonymously, described the frustration of working within such a system. "We knew what needed to be done," he said, "but our hands were tied by protocol. By the time we got permission to act, it was often too late." As journalist Koshi Shimizu began exposing these failures through his reporting, public outrage reached a boiling point. Vigils for the missing children turned into protests, with citizens demanding accountability from law enforcement and government officials. Slogans like "Justice delayed is justice denied" and "Our children deserve better" echoed through the streets. Social media amplified the movement, with hashtags like "Mao fix the system" and "Maoshans find our children" trending nationwide. Stories of police negligence and bureaucratic incompetence went viral, putting immense pressure on authorities to take action. The public outcry eventually forced the government to address the systemic issues that had allowed these cases to remain unsolved. Among the reforms introduced were centralized databases. A national database for missing persons and criminal cases was established, allowing police departments to share information and identify patterns more effectively. Improved training. Law enforcement officers received specialized training in forensic technology, victim support, and investigative techniques. Independent oversight. An independent body was created to review police conduct and ensure accountability in cases of negligence or misconduct. While these changes were welcomed, critics argued that they came too late for families like the Yokoyamas, who had already suffered irreparable losses. Despite the reforms, the phantom predator, if indeed one person was responsible, remained at large. The trail had gone cold, and new leads were scarce. For families and advocates, this was the most bitter pill to swallow, knowing that the system's failures had allowed a potential serial predator to evade justice. "We'll never stop looking," said Yukari's mother. "But it's hard to believe in a system that let us down so completely." Amid the darkness, there were small victories. Advances in forensic technology have led to breakthroughs in other cold cases, offering hope that Yukari's case and others like it might one day be solved. Advocacy groups continue to fight for the families, keeping their stories alive and pushing for further reforms. For journalist Koshi Shimizu, the fight isn't over. "These cases remind us of the cost of inaction," he said, But they also show us the power of persistence. As long as we keep searching, there's hope. The story of Japan's missing children isn't just about the victims and their families. It's about a system forced to confront its own failings. While progress has been made, the scars left by decades of negligence and injustice remain. For the families, the fight for answers continues, driven by love, determination, and the belief that their children's stories still matter. In the wake of decades of unresolved disappearances, the demand for justice for Japan's missing children became a rallying cry for families, activists, and an outraged public. Their stories, once buried in the shadows of systemic failure, began to spark a movement that aimed to reshape Japan's approach to criminal justice and child safety. For years, the families of victims like Yukari Yokoyama, Mei Sato, and Hiroki Tanaka felt like they were shouting into the void. Their cries for justice were met with silence, their pain dismissed as another cold case. But thanks to the relentless efforts of journalist Koshi Shimizu and a growing network of activists, their voices were finally being heard. "We're not just statistics," Yukari's father said during a public rally. "We're families, we're parents, brothers, and sisters, and we deserve answers." The rally, held in Tokyo's Shinjuku district, drew thousands of supporters carrying signs with messages like "Find our children" and "No more lost lives." Families shared their stories, turning their personal grief into a collective call for action. The energy was palpable, a mixture of sorrow, anger, and determination to ensure that no other family would endure the same heartbreak. The public outrage ignited by these cases forced Japan's government to confront its systemic failings. Advocacy groups spearheaded a campaign for sweeping reforms, focusing on improved child safety measures. Schools and community centers began implementing programs to teach children how to recognize and avoid dangerous situations. Public awareness campaigns emphasized the importance of vigilance and reporting suspicious activity. Legislative changes. New laws were introduced to improve the handling of missing person cases, including mandatory reporting timelines and interagency coordination. Stricter penalties were imposed for negligence and misconduct within law enforcement. Support for families. A dedicated task force was created to provide families with resources such as counseling, financial assistance, and regular updates on their cases. The fight for justice wasn't confined to the families directly affected. Across Japan, citizens joined the cause, channeling their frustration into action. Volunteer groups formed to distribute flyers, organize search efforts, and advocate for policy changes. Social media became a powerful tool, with hashtags like "Nos Justice for Yukari" and "Protect Our Children" trending nationwide. One group, calling themselves the Watchers, took a proactive approach by monitoring high-risk areas such as pachinko parlors and riversides. Armed with cameras and notepads, they became the eyes and ears of their communities, determined to prevent future tragedies. "These aren't just the police's cases anymore," said one volunteer. "They're everyone's responsibility." The pressure from families and activists led to tangible changes within Japan's criminal justice system. Among the most significant were Centralized databases. A national missing persons database was launched, allowing police departments to share information and identify patterns in real time. Enhanced forensic capabilities. Investments in DNA testing and digital forensics ensure that evidence could be analyzed more effectively, even in older cases. Independent oversight committees. These bodies were tasked with reviewing unsolved cases and investigating allegations of police misconduct, ensuring greater accountability. While these reforms represented progress, critics argued that they were long overdue. For the families, the changes were bittersweet, a step forward, but one that came at the cost of their children's lives. Despite the reforms, trust in the justice system remained fragile. For many families, the scars of years of neglect and incompetence were too deep to heal. It's hard to believe in a system that failed us so completely, said Hiroki Tanaka's mother. Even with these changes, there's no guarantee they'll find him or the others. This sentiment was echoed by advocates who warned against complacency. Reform is only the beginning, said activist Naomi Ishida. Real change requires constant vigilance and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Out of tragedy emerged a new generation of advocates, many of whom were inspired by the courage of the families who refused to give up. Organizations like the Yokoyama Foundation now work tirelessly to support victims' families and prevent future disappearances. The Foundation's initiatives include public education campaigns, teaching communities how to recognize and report the signs of child abduction, victim support services, providing counseling and legal assistance to families navigating the aftermath of a loved one's disappearance, policy advocacy, lobbying for continued reforms and increased funding for investigative resources. Our mission is simple, said the Foundation's director. We want to ensure that no family ever feels as powerless as Yukari's did. The string of disappearances also prompted a broader cultural reckoning in Japan. Parents became more cautious, communities more vigilant, and society as a whole more aware of the vulnerabilities children face. Schools incorporated safety training into their curriculums, and public spaces installed additional security measures to deter potential predators. We've learned a hard lesson, said one local official. But if we can protect even one child from harm, then we've honored the lives we've lost. Despite the progress, one haunting truth remains. The phantom predator is still out there. For the families, this is the most bitter pill to swallow. Their children's cases are no longer forgotten, but justice remains elusive. Yukari's mother, speaking at a memorial event, captured the heartbreak and hope that defined their journey. Every day, we wake up wondering if today will be the day we get answers. And every night, we go to bed wondering if we'll ever know the truth. But we won't stop fighting. Not for Yukari, not for the others. They deserve justice, and we won't rest until they get it. The fight for justice is far from over. While the reforms have brought new hope, the families of Japan's missing children know that their work is just beginning. Their stories serve as a powerful reminder of the cost of inaction and the strength of resilience. As journalist Koshi Shimizu put it, these families have shown us what it means to fight for what's right, even when the odds are against you. Their courage is a lesson for us all. Decades after the disappearance of Yukari Yokoyama and countless other children, their stories continue to resonate, not just as tragic reminders of a broken system, but as a rallying cry for change. Though justice remains elusive, the impact of their cases has sparked a movement that refuses to let their voices be silenced. For the families of Japan's missing children, the fight for answers is a lifelong mission. Yukari's parents, now older and visibly weary, still hold on to hope that one day they will know what happened to their daughter. Her mother, clutching a framed photo of Yukari during a recent vigil, spoke with quiet determination. "We owe it to her to keep going," she said. "Even if we never find her, we must make sure no other family goes through this pain." Families like the Yokoyamas have transformed their grief into action, becoming powerful advocates for reform. They've lobbied lawmakers, organized events, and partnered with organizations to push for policies that prioritize child safety. Their courage and persistence have inspired others, creating a community united by shared loss and an unshakable commitment to justice. Yukari's story, along with those of the other missing children, has become a symbol of resilience and change. Her name is invoked in schools, where children are taught about personal safety and the importance of vigilance. Communities hold annual events in her memory, ensuring that her light continues to shine. The Yokoyama Foundation, established in her honor, has grown into a national force for good. Its programs, from public education campaigns to victim support services, have touched thousands of lives. The foundation's director recently reflected on its mission. "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future." That's what Yukari's legacy is about. Despite the progress, one chilling fact remains. The phantom predator, if they exist, has never been caught. The unresolved nature of the case continues to haunt families and investigators alike. Advances in forensic technology have led to breakthroughs in other cold cases, but Yukari's disappearance and others like it remain unsolved. Every lead we've chased has ended in frustration, admitted a retired detective who once worked on Yukari's case. "It's like chasing a ghost." For journalist Koshi Shimizu, the lack of closure is a painful reminder of the system's failings. "The predator might still be out there," he said. "But what's even scarier is the thought that we may never know the truth. That's why we can't stop fighting." While Yukari's case remains a mystery, its impact on Japanese society is undeniable. The reforms sparked by her story and others have transformed the way missing persons cases are handled. Among the lasting changes are mandatory reporting. Authorities are now required to report missing children cases within 24 hours and mobilize resources immediately. Community watch programs. Neighborhoods across Japan have implemented watch programs to monitor public spaces and report suspicious activity. Enhanced forensic capabilities. Investments in DNA testing and digital forensics have become standard practice, ensuring that evidence is preserved and analyzed effectively. These changes, though long overdue, have saved lives and prevented further tragedies. For many, they represent a glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark chapter. The power of storytelling has been instrumental in keeping these cases alive. Documentaries, books, and true crime series have delved into the disappearances, shedding light on the systemic failures and the resilience of the families. These stories have not only educated the public, but also inspired action, turning individual tragedies into a collective movement. Shimizu's investigative work remains a cornerstone of this effort. Through his articles, interviews, and public appearances, he continues to push for answers and hold those in power accountable. As long as these stories are told, he said, the children will never be forgotten. Yukari's case, along with the others, has forced Japan to reflect on its values, priorities, and responsibilities. It has challenged the public to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, safety, and the cost of inaction. While progress has been made, the journey is far from over. Parents are now more vigilant, schools more proactive, and communities more united. But the shadow of the phantom predator serves as a reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing. For the families, advocates, and investigators who have dedicated their lives to this cause, the hope is that future generations will learn from their struggles. They envision a society where every child is safe, where no family is left to grieve in silence, and where justice is swift and fair. We owe it to our children, said Yukari's father at a recent memorial. Not just the ones we've lost, but the ones still here. They deserve a world where this never happens again. As the years pass, the search for Yukari and the other missing children remains both a tragedy and a testament to human resilience. Their stories have inspired change, but they also serve as a reminder of the work that still needs to be done. We may never find all the answers, Shimizu said, but what we can find is purpose. We can make sure their stories lead to something greater, something that protects the innocent and holds the guilty accountable. In the end, Yukari Yokoyama's legacy is one of hope, courage, and a refusal to give up. Her story, and those of the other missing children, continues to inspire a nation to be better, to fight harder, love deeper, and protect its most vulnerable. Her mother's final words at the latest vigil encapsulate the enduring spirit of this fight. We will never stop looking, we will never stop hoping, and we will never stop fighting for the justice our children deserve. The story of Yukari, the missing children, and the fight for justice may be unfinished, but one thing is certain: their light will never fade.